Hey, what's up everybody? I hope you're all doing fantastic out there today. Thank you as always for stopping by the channel. I have a fun, forgotten little action flick from 1991 to talk about with you guys today. It's called Toy Soldiers. It's a top tier die-hard knockoff in my opinion. It does follow a familiar structure, but I think it adds plenty of its own ambition to result in a fast-paced action thriller with a charming emotional core that still holds up pretty good today. Toy Soldiers was directed by Daniel Petrie Jr. and what would be his debut behind the camera at the time of this film's release. He was more known for his screenwriting skills with movies like Eddie Murphy's Beverly Hills Cop and Tom Hanks's Turner and Hooch on his resume. Petrie Jr. would also co-write the screenplay to this one alongside David Kopp, who at the time only had a handful of writing credits under his belt, one of those though being the classic Dolph Lundgren sci-fi thriller I Come in Peace that I absolutely love. Kopp though is still in the industry today, working strong with titles like Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible and so many more on his filmography, so I do think it's safe to say that the plot structure to Toy Soldiers, while familiar, is sufficiently sturdy for holding up plenty of cinematic entertainment, and I think it delivers just that by plugging the right pieces into this formula to create an engaging ride of action and emotion as mercenaries storm this prep school. Fuego! Toy Soldiers had a modest budget of just around $10 million. It would be released in April of '91, finishing in third place its opening weekend, behind Sylvester Stallone's comedy Oscar and Matt Damon's seductive thriller A Kiss Before Dying, with a respectable $4.1 million, and when all was said and done, this little action movie would pull in a modest $15 million in change at the box office. I'm sure this movie did fantastic on home video though. That's where I watched it for the first time, and it was a late night staple for years on channels like Cinemax and Showtime growing up. Critic legend Roger Ebert claimed the movie to be utterly predictable with its gimmicks lacking cleverness, so clearly he missed the point, but where Ebert didn't find his big brain tickled, audiences on CinemaScore gave the film an A-, and I think that's on par because this movie wasn't trying to invent the wheel. It was aiming to be a die-hard movie for teenage boys, and it succeeded in doing just that. Because Toy Soldiers is a fast-moving, emotionally driven action-adventure set in a lush singular location with subplots and character dynamics that, while recycled, do all tie in together to weave an appealing narrative. Each scene really does flow right into the next. It doesn't take itself too seriously despite the subject matter, and it injects more than enough action and emotion and suspense and friendship to create an easily engaging story that doesn't require much thought or much suspension of disbelief because it doesn't try to do too much or veer out of its lane. The film kicks off with our villains who, despite their firepower, aren't the most effective. They've stormed a palace of justice in Colombia. Luis Cali is the villain here, played with loads of charisma by Andrew Divoff. I mean, he's no Hans Gruber, but he does a great job as the maniacal villain. He's demanding the release of his kingpin father. The only problem is he's already been turned over to the US authorities the day earlier. So they drop the judge off in what I think is a great aerial shot as they flee the scene. It's a solid action-packed intro to show these villains will kill to get what they need. The film then shifts to the tranquil campus of the Regis School, an all-boys prep school. The mood is light. It's a great setting with plenty of depth and texture. I mean, you want to go to school here, but it's also the perfect playground for all the action that's to come. And this is where we meet our group of teenage heroes led by Sean Astin as Billy. He's a great lead for this movie in my opinion. I think he's very natural as the intuitive kid with the rebellion to authority. He commands this role with authenticity, and as the film pulls him into many different stressful situations, despite his clear fear and being in way over his head, he just has a naive confidence that you can't help but root for and believe can actually succeed. I mean, he goes from an underachieving prankster to a leader by the end of the film, and it's a great arc to build this plot around. Wil Wheaton drops in to play the soft-spoken Joey. He's the son of a mob boss. Keith Coogan plays the jovial, wisecracking Snuffy. T.E. Russell plays Hank, the book-smart jock, with George Perez completing the group as Pretty Ricky, and I just love this collection of friends. I think they feel so sincere and just authentic together. You can feel the friendship between them as they work together to keep this army of mercenaries from blowing up this school and killing all their fellow students. They are naturally going to have their ups and downs. They're not really built for this situation, but you can easily connect with their mission despite the absurdity the concept of a group of kids stopping armed terrorists may sound.
We're well and truly fucked. I mean, they can't rescue us. We'd all get killed.
Then they'll pay the ransom.
Maybe.
We're gonna do something, right?
We then get the great Gossett Jr. coming in as Dean Parker, and I think he is the glue that brings this film and the cast together. He just cements everybody with his commanding screen presence. He's got a sincere chemistry with Astin to sell their father figure, mentor dynamic, and Gossett Jr. is just smooth and cool in every scene despite being that constant authority figure to these kids. I think the film really does build a nice mutual respect between him and Billy early on that's used perfectly throughout the film and into the final act. He really does believe in these kids, and despite its melodramatic atmosphere, it does fuel the emotional undercurrent of the story perfectly. So like I said, everything just flows together with a nice swift pace. We meet our villains, then our unsuspecting heroes. After a few get-to-know-you scenes, the mercenaries arrive on the campus and all hell breaks loose. The school is rigged with explosives connected to a detonator on the leader of these terrorist groups' wrist, and the plot evolves from there. It's already been established that the kids, in particular Billy, are resistant to authority. They also know the ins and outs of the campus. The dean conveniently has been pulled from the school to deal with Billy's mouthwash scheme, so he becomes the outside voice of reason, and to foreshadow Billy's inevitable attempt to stop this attack. It's all simple but very effective. But naturally, these kids aren't going to do it alone, of course. That would be ridiculous. They're unarmed and they're untrained. They do, however, get to use their ingenuity to craft a plan, and that's where I think Toy Soldiers really is able to shine. It has a routine but capable first act and a familiar but satisfying finale, but to me, the entire middle of the movie, as the kids gather intel and find their bravery tested and the trust and the relationships between them are bonded, is really when this movie is kicking on all cylinders. And this is actually where I think Toy Soldiers gets a tad overlooked as just being a routine Die-Hard knockoff, when the middle part of this film with the characters interacting and playing cat and mouse with the mercenaries is such an appealing and relatively fresh ride.
I'm feeling a little better, sir.
Good.
These were the moments I loved as a kid, putting myself into the position of these kids and thinking what I would do in their situations. This middle act where Billy escapes campus to deliver the intel to the dean and the military personnel, I think is the most just tension-filled and creative sequence in the film. It always has me on edge, and I think it's so well crafted and nicely timed with the hourly head count that the terrorists are doing on these students. The switching of the chip in the remote control plane with the school bomb is an effectively suspenseful scene. It's more than a little unbelievable, but not too much. I mean, the sequence helps ramp up the suspense to the closing final act, and while it all may be a bit familiar in the genre, I think Toy Soldiers adds plenty of capable pieces that mingle together so well to result in a solid action flick you can effortlessly escape into if you want. From there, the military takes over and it's the usual gunfights and practical explosions, but it is a rewarding finale despite its familiarities. These kids are really put to the test so many times during the story. You really have taken an emotional journey of determination and growth with them throughout the runtime, and when the professionals come in to dispense textbook movie action, it's a capable closing to an unassuming action movie. I think Toy Soldiers knew exactly what it was, a coming-of-age teen drama with a die-hard setting, and it delivers just that. I definitely think these performances get overlooked a bit because they do make this movie memorable when so many others like it over the years have gone forgotten. I think Toy Soldiers will take you on a ride that can connect you to the teenager inside yourself. It's a nostalgic look back at small action movies from the late 80s and the early 90s that, despite their unassuming appearance, do pack a punch. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this review of Toy Soldiers from 1991. If you've seen it, let me know what you guys thought down in the comments, and until the next video, I'll catch you at the movies.